I thought I'd be the one giving notice. Instead, I was being walked out like a thief. My name is Mike. I'm 38 years old, and I live in Boise, Idaho. I've been working at Cobalt Marketing for 16 years, most of them under Harold, my manager, who I used to think was the sort of boss who'd back me up when it mattered. I guess I was wrong. That morning, I thought it was just another budget review. I had my laptop under my arm and a fresh notebook in my hand. I even grabbed an extra coffee for Harold, like I always did, trying to start the day on the right foot. But the second I stepped into his office, I knew something was off. He was already sitting there behind his desk, staring at a piece of paper. His expression was flat, ice cold. No small talk, no good morning. "Sit down, Mike," he said. Just like that. I sat, my heart thumping in my chest. I tried to read his face, tried to guess what was coming. He didn't give me much time. He turned the paper around and slid it across the desk to me. "This is disloyal," he said, his voice calm and flat. "Read it." I looked down and felt my stomach drop. It was a printed email, time-stamped and everything, from Owen Price, the CEO of Gray Ridge Analytics. It was a follow-up to my interview last week. An interview. I tried to keep quiet. "A half-day off for a contractor estimate for my roof," I'd said. And he bought it, or at least I thought he had. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. I closed it, swallowed hard. "Harold, I can explain." He shook his head, cutting me off. "Don't bother," he said. "You've made your choice." I could feel my hands starting to shake. 6 years under this man, and now he was staring at me like I was a stranger. Like everything I'd done here didn't matter at all. He picked up my security badge from his desk and pushed it toward me. "Security will walk you out," he said. "Email's already cut." It felt like getting punched in the gut. My badge, that stupid little plastic rectangle, had opened so many doors for me over the years, and now it was just a piece of junk in my hand. For a second, I almost said something, almost tried to explain, to apologize, to make it all okay. But then I saw his face, that smug, satisfied look, and I knew there was no point. So I stood up, slow and careful. My knees felt like they might give out, but I made myself stand tall. I picked up the badge and slipped it into my pocket. "That's it?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "You're not even going to try to fight for your job?" I looked him in the eye. "I've been fighting for this job for 6 years, Harold," I said. "I'm done." He didn't say anything, didn't even blink. I turned and walked out, my head spinning. The office outside felt like a different world. Everything looked too bright, too loud. My desk was still there, covered in neat stacks of papers and the little framed photo of my niece, who always told me I was the coolest uncle ever. I thought about how many times I'd stayed late at that desk, how many weekends I'd come in just to keep things running smooth. It didn't matter anymore. I could feel the eyes on me as I headed for the elevator. People I'd known for years, people I'd joked with over coffee, just watching. I didn't let myself look back. Harold wasn't trying to protect the company. He was trying to protect his ego, and I was done playing the loyal soldier in his little kingdom. As I walked down the hall, my hands clenched around that stupid badge, I realized something that hit me like a slap. I didn't owe them a damn thing. I packed my desk with a cardboard box under the awkward eye of a security guard named Vince. I'd seen him around for years, big guy, shaved head, always polite. Today, he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I tried to keep my head down, focused on what I was doing. My hands moved almost automatically. Phone charger, coffee mug, that framed photo of my niece. The small things that had kept me sane through endless deadlines and meetings that should have been emails. People passed by my cubicle, some of them slowing down when they saw me. I caught a few glances, some sad, some just confused. A couple of folks I'd known since my first year gave me that tight, polite smile people use when they don't know what to say. "It's all right," I said to one of them, a girl named Tara who joined a couple years back. "I'm good." She nodded and gave me a look that said she didn't believe me, but she didn't push it. I appreciated that. Vince stayed close but didn't say much. His job was to make sure I didn't do anything stupid, I guess. Or maybe just to make sure I didn't stick around any longer than I had to. I slipped my laptop into the box last, taking a moment to run my hand over the worn keys. So many late nights, so many emails. It felt like I was putting a part of myself in that box. When I stood up, Vince shifted his weight like he was about to say something. Then he thought better of it and just gestured toward the door. I walked out of that building for the last time with my box balanced on my hip. The lobby was quiet, like everyone had decided to look busy the moment they saw me. I didn't blame them. No one wants to make eye contact with the guy getting escorted out. Outside, the sky was bright, too bright. I squinted against the sun, my eyes tearing up a bit from the sudden light. I told myself that's all it was. I loaded the box in the back seat of my truck, shut the door, and just stood there for a minute. My hands on the side of the cab, head down. My chest felt tight, but I wasn't going to let it show. I climbed into the driver's seat and shut the door. The familiar smell of stale coffee and the faint hint of the pine air freshener I'd hung months ago surrounded me. I sat there with the engine off, staring at the dash like it could tell me what to do next. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second, I thought it was Harold or HR, maybe some final jab before they washed their hands of me. But when I pulled it out, I saw a name that made me pause. Owen Price, the CEO at Gray Ridge Analytics. Can we meet today at 3 p.m.? I read it again, like my eyes were playing tricks on me. I'd only had that one lunch meeting with him, casual, nothing formal. I didn't think it would go anywhere. But here he was, reaching out when I had nothing else left. I took a breath. My hands were still shaking a little, but I texted back, "Sure, just tell me where." I set the phone on the passenger seat and looked up at the sky. Everything had changed in a single morning. My career, my sense of who I was, all of it gone in a 15-minute meeting. But now there was this. A chance, maybe. A chance to prove to someone, maybe even to myself, that I was worth more than a line item in Harold's budget review. I didn't know if it would work out. But right then, sitting in that truck in the bright afternoon light, I decided I was going to find out. I joined Cobalt Marketing right out of college, fresh from Eastern Washington University with a degree in business and a sense that the world was mine for the taking. Back then, I didn't know much about what made a career, but I knew I was ready to work. My first job was in operations, nothing glamorous. I spent my days coordinating shipments, updating spreadsheets, and learning how to make things run behind the scenes. I didn't complain. I was just grateful to have a foot in the door. The office was small, cramped, and smelled like burnt coffee and toner ink, but to me, it was the start of something real. Late nights became my routine. I stayed after hours to learn everything I could. Picked up accounts no one else wanted. The ones that were messy, the ones that never turned a profit, the ones everyone said weren't worth the trouble. I didn't care. I figured if I showed them I was willing to do the dirty work, maybe they'd see I was worth investing in. Within 4 years, I'd moved from operations to account work. It wasn't easy, but I earned it. I built up a reputation for fixing what other people broke. My name got passed around whenever something went sideways. Eventually, that's how I ended up with Gray Ridge Analytics. That account was a mess when I got it. Bad communication, missed deadlines, money left on the table. Everyone else had given up on it, but I didn't. I took the calls no one wanted to take, even when they came in at midnight. I dug through every detail, every report, until I understood exactly what Gray Ridge needed. I wasn't a genius. I was just stubborn. It paid off. Within a year, I'd saved a $2.7 million contract that everyone thought was dead. Owen Price himself had called me to say I was the only one who got it. That was the best day of my career. I thought it would change everything. You'd think that would have earned me something more than maybe next year. A bonus, a promotion, at least a thank you that meant something. But it didn't. They gave me a fancy plaque that said, "Excellence in Client Management," and nothing else. My salary didn't move. My title didn't change. And Harold just shrugged when I asked him about it. He said, "We're a small company, Mike. You know how it is." Yeah, I knew how it was. They keep me exactly where they wanted me because I made them look good. I brought in the money, and they spent it on bigger offices, fancier cars, and corporate retreats I was never invited to, all while telling me I was part of the family. I kept grinding, kept showing up, kept telling myself that loyalty would pay off eventually. But every time I walked into that office with the numbers to prove I'd earned more, I walked out with nothing but promises. 3 years of that. 3 years of maybe next year, while I watched Harold roll in with a brand new Audi and the same tired excuses. I used to think that if I just worked harder, they'd finally see what I was worth. But I think deep down, I always knew the truth. They didn't care. Not really. They liked that I was dependable, that I'd show up and clean up everyone else's mess. But they were never going to see me as anything more than that. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to be the kind of guy who stuck it out, who showed loyalty even when it wasn't easy. But as I sat there in my truck, holding that text from Owen Price, I realized I'd been loyal to people who were never going to return the favor. And for the first time, I let myself feel it. The anger, the betrayal, the bone-deep exhaustion. I'd built a career one late night at a time, and all I had to show for it was a plaque collecting dust on my desk. But maybe, just maybe, that was about to change. 3 years in a row, I walked into Harold's office with the same pitch. Same numbers, same charts. Each time, I'd gather my data and build my case like I was a lawyer fighting for my own freedom. I'd start with the basics, my account numbers, my revenue. Show him how my accounts outperformed every projection. I always ended with the same question, soft but steady. "So, is this the year we talk about a raise?" 3 years in a row, Harold leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against his notepad. He'd make sympathetic noises, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't even listening. "Mike, you know how tight things are right now," he'd say. "We're focusing on infrastructure this year." Or, "We're in a holding pattern until Q3. Every time, it was a different excuse. Every time, the same result. Meanwhile, he was rolling in with a new Audi, fresh suits that probably cost more than my rent. The first time I noticed the car, I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. But then he showed up with a fancy leather briefcase and bragged about his golf retreat in Scottsdale. That's when I knew I was done. The final straw came the day I landed a huge renewal with Gray Ridge. I didn't just keep the account. I got them to up their contract by 45%. I thought, this is it. There's no way they can ignore this. I put on my best shirt, walked into Harold's office with that same quiet determination. I laid it all out. Numbers, percentages, graphs. I even cracked a smile, thinking maybe this time it would be different. When I finished, Harold leaned back, his eyes scanning the report. He didn't even bother to hide his smirk. "We're focusing on infrastructure this year," he said, just like that. Like I hadn't spent every night for weeks saving that deal. I felt my face go hot, my hands gripping the folder so hard the edges dug into my palms. But I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just nodded. "Got it," I said, and I walked out. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. My resume had been sitting there for years, untouched. I updated it quietly, line by line, like a prayer. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even angry. I was just done. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my coworkers, not even Greg, my best friend since college. I figured if I was going to leave, I'd do it on my own terms. I didn't want to be the guy making a scene. I wanted to be the guy who walked out with his head high. So I started sending it out. A few here, a few there. I didn't expect much, but each time I hit submit, I felt a tiny bit lighter, like I was finally admitting to myself that I deserved better. I didn't even get the chance to give my notice. Gray Ridge moved faster than I ever expected, and that was fine by me. I didn't storm out. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped letting them take me for granted. I was done with maybe next year, done waiting for someone else to see my worth. This was the beginning of something new. I didn't know what it looked like yet, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. My best friend Greg called right after it happened. He'd already heard. I guess the news of my exit spread faster than I thought it would. His girlfriend, Amy, worked in HR, and she'd seen the security escort me out. "It's insane," Greg said, his voice low but urgent. "Everyone knows you carried that place." I leaned back in the driver's seat of my truck, my phone pressed against my ear. I was parked outside the office, but I couldn't bring myself to drive away just yet. My hands were still shaking, though I tried to keep my voice calm. "Yeah," I said. "It's over." Greg let out a long sigh. "You good?" I didn't have an answer for that. I was still numb, my head spinning. So I just said, "I will be." He didn't push. That was Greg for you. Always knew when to step back. A few minutes later, Owen Price called. His number popped up on my screen like a spark of hope. My throat went dry as I answered. "Mike," he said, his voice crisp but warm. "I heard what happened." I took a breath, forcing the words out steady. "Yeah, it's been a day. Let's skip the wait," he said. "Come in today. We can talk face to face." I blinked, the weight in my chest shifting just a little. "You mean today? Today, he said. "I don't want you sitting in that parking lot any longer than you have to." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "All right, give me an hour." I ended the call and just sat there for a moment. My hands were still wrapped around the steering wheel, knuckles white. For the first time since Harold pushed that badge across his desk, I felt like I was on the verge of something bigger. I drove home, took the world's fastest shower, and put on my best shirt. Nothing fancy, but clean and pressed. My small way of showing up for myself. By the time I pulled up in front of Gray Ridge's office, I felt lighter. Nervous, sure, but lighter. It was a big, modern building, glass and steel, bright in the afternoon sun. I took a breath, straightened my tie, and walked in. Owen was waiting for me in the lobby, a confident smile on his face. He shook my hand like we were old friends, not just a CEO and an account manager. "Come on up," he said. "Let's talk." As we walked down the hallway, I couldn't help but think about how different this felt from every meeting I'd ever had at Cobalt. No hushed voices, no closed doors, just light, open space, and the sense that people actually wanted to be here. In the elevator, Owen glanced at me. "You know," he said, "we've had our eye on you for a while. I'm glad you're here." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. I thought I was starting over. I was actually stepping up. When we reached his office, he didn't make me wait. No PowerPoint, no half-hour small talk, just a straight look in the eye. I'm not here to interview you, Mike, he said. I already know what you can do. I want to talk about what comes next. I sat down in the chair opposite his desk, my heart pounding. I didn't know what exactly he meant, but for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I wasn't just filling a seat. I was being seen. I still didn't know where it would lead. But right then, in that office with the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Owen didn't waste any time. The second I sat down in that bright, open office, he slid an envelope across the table toward me. It wasn't thick, but the weight of it felt like a boulder pressing on my chest. This isn't an interview, he said calmly, leaning back in his chair. We've been watching how you handle yourself, how you manage tough clients. Hell, even how you handled Harold's nonsense. You're exactly what we're looking for. I didn't say anything right away. My fingers drummed against the edge of the envelope, nerves buzzing just under my skin. I opened it slowly, and there it was, an offer letter. Director of Strategy. Full team. The salary was nearly double what I'd been making at Cobalt. My first instinct was to say yes, just blurt it out and sign on the spot. But something in me hesitated. Maybe it was all those years of keeping my head down, of being told to wait my turn. Or maybe it was just the shock of someone finally seeing me for what I was worth. Owen watched me, his expression steady. I want you to understand something, Mike, he said. You're not being hired out of sympathy. We've had our eye on you for months. You're here because we know you're the right guy for this job. I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry, and my thoughts were racing. This was everything I'd been working toward, the kind of opportunity I'd never been given at Cobalt. But it was happening so fast, and I was still reeling from how the morning had started, how Harold had looked at me like I was disposable. I looked up at Owen. I need some time, I said quietly. I want to make sure I'm making the right decision. His eyes didn't narrow in suspicion. He didn't act like I'd just spit in his face. He just nodded, like he respected the fact that I wasn't about to jump at the first chance to run away from my past. Take the night, he said. Call me in the morning. I know you'll make the right call. I stood, slipping the offer back into the envelope. My hands were still trembling a little, but there was something else there too, something like pride. Like I was finally on the other side of the glass, not just pressed up against it. As I left his office, he gave me a small smile. Whatever you decide, Mike, he said, I just want you to remember one thing. You're worth a lot more than what you were getting. The words hit me harder than I expected. For years, I'd been killing myself to prove I was worth something. And here was someone telling me I already was. I walked out of the building feeling like I'd just stepped into a different world. The air felt fresher. The sun felt warmer. I didn't even notice the traffic as I drove home. I was too busy running through every detail of that offer letter in my mind. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a long moment with the engine off, listening to the tick of the cooling metal. I thought about everything Harold had said that morning, how he'd made it sound like loyalty was something that had to be paid in silence and sacrifice. But standing in Owen's office, I realized I'd been loyal to the wrong person all along. I didn't say yes that night, but in my gut, I already knew I would. Next morning, I walked back into Cobalt Marketing, not as an employee, but as a guest. My phone had rung at 7 a.m. sharp. Judith, one of the board members I'd only ever seen in shareholder updates and the occasional hallway handshake. Mike, can you come in? She asked. Her tone was professional, but there was an edge to it, a tension I hadn't heard before. We need to talk. I agreed. Maybe I was just curious to see what they had to say now that I was out, or maybe I wanted to stand in that office one more time, not as the loyal worker bee, but as the guy they'd underestimated. I walked in wearing the same suit I'd put on for Owen the day before. Vince, the security guard, gave me a nod and a small smile when I passed him, a silent apology for having to escort me out. I gave him a nod back. No hard feelings, man. You were just doing your job. Judith met me in a small conference room, not Harold's office. She was calm, too calm, like she'd spent all night rehearsing what to say. Thank you for coming, Mike, she said, gesturing for me to sit. She didn't waste time. Victoria may have acted prematurely, she said carefully, choosing her words like every syllable was a negotiation. We weren't aware of the raised denials. We weren't aware of your contributions to Grey Ridge. I just looked at her. My heart was beating fast, but my face was steady. And Judith took a breath. We want to make this right. We're prepared to offer reinstatement, a promotion, retroactive pay increases. We know we made a mistake. I almost laughed. I almost wanted to ask her if she'd even read my file before today, or if she was just realizing what she'd lost because she could see the panic in Harold's eyes when he realized Grey Ridge was gone. I leaned back in the chair. And why now? I asked, my voice calm. Why after 6 years of me asking? She shifted uncomfortably, like she wasn't used to anyone talking to her that way. Gray Ridge, she admitted. We didn't realize how crucial that account was, and how crucial you were to it. I felt something in my chest go cold. It was exactly what I'd suspected. They didn't care about me. Not really. They cared about the account, about the money. I appreciate the offer, I said after a pause, but I'm going to decline. Judith blinked, like she hadn't even considered that as an option. Mike, think this through, she said quickly. This is a chance to fix everything. No, I said quietly. It's a chance for you to fix everything for yourselves, not for me. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. My voice didn't shake. I'm not coming back, and I'm not going to let you pretend this was just a misunderstanding. She tried again. You're making a mistake. No, I said, cutting her off. I'm not. I've already accepted another offer, and I'm not coming back here. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't yell. I just walked out, past the rows of cubicles where I'd spent years of my life, each one a reminder of what I'd been willing to give. Each one a reminder of what I'd never gotten in return. I wasn't there for them. I was there to make sure they knew exactly why I wouldn't be back. And as I stepped outside into the cold morning air, I felt something that had been missing for a long time. Freedom. A week later, I sat at my new desk at Gray Ridge, reviewing some fresh proposals, when the email came in. The subject line was simple: termination of contract. My heart kicked up in my chest as I read the first few lines. Gray Ridge was officially terminating their contract with Cobalt Marketing, effective immediately. I scrolled to the bottom of the email and saw my name CC'd. I hadn't written it, hadn't signed it, but there it was in black and white, the end of an era. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a cold, quiet satisfaction settle in my chest. I hadn't lifted a finger to make this happen. I hadn't needed to. They'd done it all on their own. By noon, the fallout had already started. Greg, my best friend, sent me a text that was equal parts stunned and smug. Harold's in damage control mode. Staff's updating resumes like crazy. I didn't gloat. I didn't tell Greg how good it felt to hear that. I just took another sip of coffee and kept working. Later that afternoon, another email came in, this one from Owen. He'd looped me in on the transition plan for the Gray Ridge account, making sure I had everything I needed to take full control. There wasn't a hint of uncertainty in his tone. No, we'll see how it goes. Just, you're in charge. I was quiet for a long time after that. I stared out the window of my new office, down at the busy street below. It felt surreal, like I'd woken up in a different life. A few days later, Greg called me. He'd been talking to some of the folks still at Cobalt, and the gossip was ugly. Harold was in meetings all day, trying to convince the board that this wasn't his fault. He was promising new strategies, new accounts, but no one was buying it. People are pissed, man, Greg said. You were the only one who could keep Gray Ridge happy. Now that you're gone, they're realizing how screwed they really are. I didn't say much, just let him talk, because there wasn't much else to say. I didn't fire the shot, but I was the one holding the last word. The thing that stuck with me, the thing that kept me up at night in the best way, was how quiet my revenge had been. No screaming, no threats, just me doing my job, and them finally realizing they couldn't do theirs without me. I didn't want to see them fail. Not really. I just wanted them to understand what they'd thrown away. And now, they did. So I went back to work. My name was finally on the door. My team respected me, trusted me. I had the authority, the freedom, the kind of future I'd almost given up on ever having. Every day, I walked into that office knowing I'd made the right choice. I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I didn't have to beg for recognition or wait for scraps. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and that was the loudest message I could ever send. Monday came, my first official day as Director of Strategy at Gray Ridge. I woke up before my alarm, too wired to sleep. I put on a fresh shirt and a new pair of shoes I'd bought for this exact moment. Small things, but they made me feel ready. When I walked through the glass doors of Gray Ridge's headquarters, I didn't feel like the new guy. I felt like I belonged. The lobby was bright and open, with that faint smell of fresh coffee and polished wood. No hushed conversations, no wary glances, just people going about their day, confident and focused. My new team was already waiting when I got to the office. There was no awkwardness, no tiptoeing around me. They smiled, offered me coffee, asked about my weekend. It was the kind of welcome I hadn't even realized I'd been craving all those years at Cobalt. Before lunch, we were already in the thick of things, brainstorming campaigns, reviewing data, setting priorities. I listened, asked questions, took notes. But when I spoke, they listened, really listened. No sideways glances, no patronizing nods, just respect. By noon, I'd already flagged my top 3 priorities for the quarter and earned buy-in from the CMO, a sharp woman named Kendra who seemed to value results more than politics. It felt like everything I'd ever wanted. No begging, No proving myself to people who never cared in the first place. That afternoon, I sat down to review proposals from some outside agencies for an upcoming project. I recognized a name in the pile: Cobalt Marketing. My old company, desperate for work after losing Gray Ridge as a client. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just read the proposal like it was any other. Their numbers were fine. No glaring mistakes. But that wasn't enough anymore. Not here. I marked up the proposal with notes about consistency, innovation, trust, things that went deeper than a slick pitch deck. In the margin, I wrote a single word: reevaluate. Because that was what I'd been doing since the day I walked out of Cobalt. Reevaluating. My work, my worth, my life. The final revenge wasn't yelling at Harold or watching the company crumble. It was this: holding them to the same standards as everyone else. No favorites, no special treatment. As I handed the proposals back to Kendra, she gave me a nod. Good work, she said simply. Keep setting the bar. I walked out of her office with my head held high. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was in control. My decisions mattered, and so did I. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel like I had something to prove. I just felt ready, and that was enough. A year later, I stood in my corner office at Gray Ridge, staring out at the Boise skyline. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the glint of the new nameplate on my door: Mike Reynolds, VP of Strategy. It still felt surreal sometimes, like I was living someone else's life, someone smarter, braver, someone who'd finally stopped playing it safe. I thought about how far I'd come in just 12 months, how I'd stepped into this role with every doubt and second-guessing voice still rattling around in my head, and how, piece by piece, I'd quieted them all by showing up every day, ready to lead, ready to build something real. Cobalt had lost more than just Gray Ridge. Word got around fast in a town like this. Other clients followed me, and then others after them, until that once proud company was a ghost of what it used to be. I heard Harold step down about 6 months after I left. Greg told me the rumor was he'd tried to take credit for the Gray Ridge work one last time, and the board had seen right through it. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel vindicated. Mostly, I just felt thankful for the push, for the way it had forced me to see what I was really worth and what I wasn't. I turned away from the window and walked back to my desk, where a fresh stack of proposals waited. I poured myself another cup of coffee. No more office coffee, no more paper cups. This was my office now, my rules, my life. Every so often, I'd still get an email or a LinkedIn message from an old colleague at Cobalt. Most were polite, cautiously worded. Hope you're doing well. Would love to catch up. I always read them with a kind of detached curiosity. I knew what they wanted, some tiny crack in the door that might let them slip back into my orbit. But that door was closed for good. Sometimes I thought about Harold, how he looked at me across his desk that last morning, sure he was in control, and how I'd realized, right then and there, that control was an illusion he'd created for himself. I didn't need to fight him for it. I just needed to walk away. That was what freedom looked like. I didn't just bounce back. I leveled up, and standing here now, with the city spread out below me and a team I actually respected waiting on my next move, I knew one thing for sure: getting shoved out the door was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because what started as a firing ended as freedom, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.